This is a big day. This is a big day. Last year on this day, 112 million people watched the Super Bowl. This year, they're expecting about 115 million. America has turned this day into a national conversation. This year, they are charging $4.5 million for a 30-second advertisement spot, expected to bring in $360 million advertising alone. The ads go up on YouTube and they go up on Hulu, and then what do people do? They start making comments, they start voting. This is a day where there are lines drawn. There's much to think about this day. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this day, but my aim this morning is that we would all be encouraged by God and motivated by the Holy Spirit to build our lives on the mercies of God. And I want to share a text with you this morning which comes out of the book of Romans. I'm going to read Romans chapter 12, verse 1 and 2. Romans chapter 12, verse 1 and 2. Therefore, I urge you, brothers, in view of the mercies of God, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your spiritual act of worship. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and you will be able to test and approve what God's will is good, pleasing, and perfect will. That is a very, very packed verse. We're going to talk a little bit about that verse today. That verse draws a line right smack dab in the middle of this amazing book called Romans. A line between what precedes it and what comes after it. And I talked a little bit just to begin the day with the fact that this is a day in which lines are drawn throughout this country and beyond. Most everybody finds a way to connect with this day. Brother Lee told us about his friend, and his friend is not alone, because more than half of Americans will partake in gambling on this big game. As Brother Lee said, it's questionable if your tithe has a cause and effect relationship with winning that bet. That's probably not going to happen. But there will be $6 billion to $10 billion exchanging hands around this game. There will be side bets. There will be choosing sides. There will be comparing. There is a story that says that there is a Las Vegas spread on whether Idina Menzel forgets or omits a word to the national anthem. There is a line in Vegas trying to pick which color hoodie Belichick is going to wear. There is a line that exists to try to guess on which song Katy Perry is going to sing first in the halftime entertainment. In one way or the other, millions of people will be motivated to engage in this game, and will take sides and do some serious comparing. Motivation. Obviously, much of this country will find different motivation to engage this game. My daughter is interested in the ads. There is the competition itself. There is the entertainment. Most of us here love David Canales a lot, so we're going for the Seahawks. Therefore, we are Seahawks fans. Some of you may say, I don't like Coach Belichick. He is too morose. That guy has no affect. And what about Deflategate? But I love Brady's smile. Therefore, I'm a Patriots fan. I know some of you ladies are melted by that guy when he gets up and smiles. Oh, someone over there, huh? That wasn't you, Paco, was it? Oh, okay. How about Pete Carroll? Man, article in the paper this week. To this day, there are people that live in this city that hate him and love him. They say Pete Carroll is a cheat. He left town right at the time that the NCAA posse was hot on the trail. And because of him, we've had 5 years of sanctions on our Trojans. And the guy is just too happy all the time. I don't even care anymore about Pete Carroll. Some of you might say, well, I love the puppy story. I love the puppy story in the Budweiser commercial. I want to watch it just to see what happens to the puppy. Maybe you're interested in Katy Perry or Lenny Kravitz, who's the king of cool. Therefore, I'm going to watch TV. Therefore, I'm going to be a part of the American spectacle this day. When Paul says in Romans, I urge you therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, he's talking about what our motivation should be in life. I shed a little light on what people might do today in terms of the motivation for engaging this event that's going on. But something very big and important here is where Paul says at the beginning of this verse, I urge you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God. He is saying that the life that I'm calling you to live in comes from the preceding chapters that were ahead of this word, therefore. That the call that Paul is asking and putting upon us does not come out of thin air. It is built on something incredibly worth talking about this morning. It is built on something. The first 11 chapters of Romans is all about what our life should be built upon. It is not plucked out of thin air. Therefore, I urge you, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God. It has roots. There is something about the Word. It has a foundation. It is the foundation. These first 11 chapters is the foundation of our life, which we should be building upon. Therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, I urge you. Our Christian life has a foundation. Our Christian life has a foundation. And that foundation is so essential to understanding what Paul is talking about here. The next 5 chapters of Romans, we are called to live in a certain way. 1 through 11 is a foundation to live out. It's all the doctrine that goes into our faith. All the teachings that Paul does in chapter 11 is a little bit about what Ray Gonzalez talked about when he came up here to tell us about this class that he's giving to us. The seeds that we all need in life to have a better rooted and grounded walk with God is what Paul is talking about. These are big concepts. Paul is, in these first 11 chapters, telling us what is true about God, what is true about Christ, what is true about salvation, and what we should do. And it's moving from the foundation, and it's applying what we have been told in those first 11 chapters. It's helping us to know what to do with everything that he shed light on in these first 11 chapters and how to build upon it. In a messy way, I'm trying to say to us, Paul has shared a foundation for our life. I can't go through all 11 chapters right here. But the question for us today is to just question, what is our foundation? What is our motivation in life? To take a moment this morning and pause and think about the dynamics that are going on in your life today. Think about the situations that your family is in. Think about the dreams and the aspirations and the hopes that you have. Think about the battles that you are involved with right now. Think about the work context in which you are in. Just take a moment, should we all, and think about those things in our lives. And knowing that we are people that have the opportunity to engage these events in our life. That we are not robots. That God made us in this creative, amazing, wonderful way and placed within our lives this spirit that gives us the ability to reach out beyond ourselves and engage the world. It's just not us. The entire world has this beautiful dynamic in God's creation to be able to reach out and impact and do something with the choices that they have to make. We are not animals that have just this instinctual response, but we have been given this amazing gift to be able to engage the world in which we live. And that is what I'm trying to get us to think about today, and what I believe Paul is trying to get us to do in this message, which is to take a moment and to pause and to think about what is motivating you to make the decisions that you have to make every day. What is your motivation? What is my foundation? I don't have to name the things that are important to your life right now. I hope that as you are here, you are with those situations. You are with those plans. You are feeling the effects of the things in your life, and that I am just asking you to take a look at what Paul is saying and to ask what your motivation is. Let's think about this great game today. This great game today is probably the highlight of competition. And if you learn a little bit about competition, you understand that people who compete need to find something that motivates them. And what I've learned about the athletes that exist in this great game today is that there is a lot of motivation that comes from something like rejection. From being compared to other people and being told, you can't make it. This is a game, and this world is filled with competitors that are often the best because they are fueled by rejection. There was a story about the Seattle Seahawk named Doug Baldwin after he came off the field defeating the Green Bay Packers. And he walked by a group of reporters and journalists and he said, "You all didn't believe. You all counted us out. At the beginning of the season, you said we weren't contenders. When this game only had a few minutes left, you counted us out. That was his motivation. That was what drove him. Countless athletes and achievers hold on to every kernel of disrespect. How many of us are here motivated by something that has lodged itself inside of our spirit? Some denial, some rejection, some feeling of insecurity, something that defines us, that pushes us and motivates us to want to succeed, to want to push it up in front of somebody's face, to want to show everybody that we can do it. I know Mission Ebenezer Family Church. And I know if you're like me, you have those seeds inside of you that motivate you to do something that comes out of being backstabbed, hurt, turned away from, overlooked, made you mad. There's a sister who's honest. So whether it's real, whether it's perceived, whether it's entirely fabricated, it is a motivation. When someone tells me I can't do something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be able to do it. Do you guys see that Derek Coleman advertisement? The deaf player from the Seattle Seahawks? Oh, it's a powerful commercial. It talks about how this guy was told he couldn't do it. And it's a nice line. He said, you know what? I didn't listen to him because I couldn't hear him anyway. The guy's an NFL player. So here's the thought. Therefore, use it. Use the pain of the moment to lift more weights, to work on your mechanics, to study more football, to be a better teammate, to grow in your leadership capabilities. Everybody's doing it. Everybody's trying to get an edge. We're constantly drawing lines. You guys seen that show, Friday Night Tykes? Oh, we watched that show last night. Well, that show is a trip. I didn't know what to feel about that show. It's a reality TV show about these Pop Warner kids in the state of Texas. And it follows their lives, beginning of the season, the coaches, the actual games themselves. And it was hard to know what to do. You'd love to see these kids fight and want to win. And you'd see these coaches in their intensity. And there was this one brother who was at the beginning of the show saying, yeah, man, I want to be the best coach, and I want to be a better coach than I was last year because what was he? What's the word? He was pulled out. He wasn't allowed to coach anymore because he did something wrong. He goes, I want to be a better dad. I want to be a better coach. I want to stop cussing so much, and I want to be a better Christian. And then, man, the first game that they were playing, they had to push the bleep button like every 3 minutes. And they were yelling at these kids, and the kids were crying on the bench, but I didn't know what to feel, man. I kind of loved the competitive spirit, but you kind of felt like, man, it was abusive. I had tension watching that show. But it's an interesting show, but competition bleeds into every part of our culture. Competition and comparison becomes a part of our lives from almost the moment of birth. My wife and daughter are leaving, not because I hope of anything other than Sophia has a basketball game today. I promised I wouldn't talk about them after they left. Motivation. We all have this desire to win. You know, this competition and comparison, it's amazing what it does to us. It creates harmful behavior. It creates an unwillingness to really maximize joint gains that might be a part of collaboration and teamwork. It can create hostile attitudes. It makes for biased recommendations. When people are too similar to us, if they're our friends or our rivals, it creates a feeling inside of us that sometimes we're not very comfortable with. If you're honest, you'll understand it. You'll identify it in yourself. And we talk about being good friends, but man, you know it. When you have a friend that succeeds a little bit more than you feel like they should, or that make you a little bit smaller, you feel it inside. I'll be honest. I get competitive with people that I'm close to, with my colleagues. I think it's healthy to be able to understand it and claim it. It gets dangerous when you don't think about it. The closer we get to it, sometimes the more competitive we get. I said I wouldn't talk about her when she left, but I'm really just saying something about my hard-headedness and hers. Man, we get competitive with each other, my wife and I. Things don't always work out really well, and we dig lines really deep, and we have a battle of either comparing something or competing about who's right or who's wrong. I got 2 teenagers in my house. I can talk about them because they're right here. My daughter does not have any hesitancy to give you a look when she thinks you're wrong. Now, the hard part is that often she's right. So then I have the tension of knowing how to say, okay, you're right, but making sure she does it in a respectful way. I'm not always real good at it, am I? Oh, diplomatic, no response. It can bleed into us. But my gosh, when it comes to the well-being of my teenagers, I sometimes become so enmeshed, such a micromanager. It is so hard for me to feel like I have the ability to trust in God, that God is going to be able to see them through. I get blinded by my own intentionality, by my own competitive nature. Sometimes I get so involved in that competitive dynamic and comparing myself with other people that I get blinded. And it gets tenser. And I get more rabid at grinding it out to show somebody that they're not going to stop me from getting at what I believe, I feel is the best. If you're like me, it gets into your life too. Paul is saying here, I urge you, brothers, therefore, to build upon the mercies of God. Sometimes even our walk with God, it can become so built on legalism that we think we have this need to build on it, to work it out. I want to tell a little story about my mom. My mom is an Alzheimer's patient. My mom is a sweetheart. My mom loves the Lord. My mom was somebody who taught Bible study to kids. My mom was somebody who prayed for me night after night. My mom was somebody who, when she had to go into a convalescent home because we couldn't take care of her anymore at home, cussed out everybody who tried to help her. She took some swings at people. Come on, Mom. God bless you. I get to see my mom every week. Thank God she's close. My mom doesn't know who I am by name. She can't put together stories. She can't put together even sentences. And when I go to see her on a weekly basis and I go by her side, it is a tough time. It is a beautiful time. I went last week and I could tell it was not a good moment because when I walked by the caregiver, she had a mean look on her face. And when I looked at my mom, she had a mean look at her face. And I knew there was a tense moment going on, and there was a big line between the two of them. And I looked at my mom, and I tried to warm her up a little bit, and I smiled at her, and I said, "Mom, I love you." And she smiled back at me, and she said, "Good." And then I tried to find ways, as I always do, in the midst of seeing my mom in this place that doesn't make any sense to me. When I think about my mom laying in a bed that belongs to an institution and not in one in her own home. When I think about a mom who used to love reciting Bible memory verses and now she can't even put two words together that make sense. When I think about a mom who used to love people no matter what, who now is laying in a place where she really can't do much at all. It is really hard for me to know what to say and how to do anything that makes help, but I try, and I try, and I try, and I say things to her, and we have little brief moments, but we had this humongous moment just the other night when she looked at me as I was trying to have a conversation with her, and she said, "Let's just rest right here." And I'll be honest with you that what flooded my soul was this sense of peace that was so overwhelming that I could do nothing but feel this amazing joy. And to me, this is what I believe is at the core of this verse right here, where Paul says, "I urge you to do nothing but trust in the mercies of God." Is that we as Christians feel like we have to work hard to do all the effort to get ourselves involved in feeling like we are the ones that have to make up the righteousness, the holiness, everything that we need to have as Christians. And what is being said right here is, let's just rest right here. Because Paul laid out in the first 11 chapters everything that has been done by God through Jesus Christ. Everything that has been done for us by God through Jesus Christ and our salvation, we can just rest right here. What's your motivation? What's the foundation? Let's just rest right here. What are the mercies of God that we can rest upon? We're going to have some right here pretty soon. We're going to rest on the mercies of God. God's loving kindness, God's grace, God's long suffering, God's love. God's love is made perfect for us in the first 11 chapters. He shed the blood that is capable of cleansing us. There's no condemnation for us. We have victory over death. He's given us grace to forgive, grace to restore, grace to preserve, grace to perfect. We are adopted in. We are adopted in, brothers and sisters. In Romans, it says that we have been adopted into the Father in heaven where we can cry out to Him, Abba, Father. That means that if we can say, Abba, Father, that we should have the sincerity, the genuineness, the love and the passion to live as a son of the living God. But Paul is saying that he knows that as we live in this world, that is not an easy thing to do. So he's reminding us right here, urging us to live in this moment where he says, it's all been done for us. We have been given a foundation in which we can build our life on. And I want to just remind us all that the foundation has been done for us and we can rest right here. Rest right here and build your life up from that. Rest right here. And it says in Romans in the same two verses, don't live in this world, but live in the world to come. It's not just about the competitive dynamic that exists in this life, but we need to be reminded of the world that is to come. When I look at my mom, I can no longer see that she's going to build her life by structuring in herself some sense of righteousness and holiness, but she is only resting on the foundation and the life to come. There's this great story in the paper about this bartender in Boston. They have been hit by the historical storm unlike no other. And this brother when there was over 3 feet of snow on the street outside of his bar, took out of his bar a snow shovel. And he walked out in front of his bar and he dug the snow, scraped it off the street to show the words in the street that say finish. And it's the world famous finish line for the Boston Marathon. All that image told me is that we do not live in this world alone. It's not just about starting, but it's knowing that there is a finish line and an age to come. But life brings stuff in our life that buries that concept, that buries that idea. And we have to be here and clear that if we rest on what God has done, we also must make sure that we clean off that which would keep us from knowing that we have a life to live and a goal and a finish line to pursue. That it is not just about this age, but it is about the age to come. And so 2 things. Would you find your motivation in life to rest upon what God has given us through Jesus Christ, as Paul describes it in the first 11 chapters of Romans? And that would you then from there know that it is not just about what we do in this world and what we get caught up in, what the motivation factors are that are so easy at our grasp, but that we would remember that we live for an age to come and that finish line is what we need to keep in our sights.